Hey y'all, time for a few wrap-up videos for Promise. This is something I wanted to do since before I started this walkthrough, but now's as good a time as any. The picture is the most consistently inconsistent part of the comic. It's an obvious reference to Mary's letter in Science Hill 2, which changes subtly and then more greatly, and then finally is revealed to be a blank sheet of paper. The closest comparison in other media that I can think of is the Captain's portrait in WALL-E, which showed just how far humanity had devolved and how much greater the robots had become in a single shot. The photograph in Promise shows Vanessa's changing sanity and her changing desires as the comic progresses. This gives a focus for the psychological trauma that she experiences, while slowly revealing the truth to the audience. Now, one thing I like is that every single time the picture is completely redrawn. So the subtle changes were at first not readily apparent, like it would have been if it was copy-pasted. In the introduction, comic number 8, Vanessa is in complete denial, thinking it's an ordinary wedding photo. The second time we see it is in comic 179, and it's essentially unchanged. Both of these times it says to the prettiest bridesmaid, Vanessa has repressed what should have been the worst memories of her life. The picture's third appearance, in 377, after the Boyer incident, it says, for the prettiest, and Vanessa is openly eyeing James. Silent Hill is beginning to warp Vanessa's mental state, so she's remembering what she wished had happened. Commenters on this one seemed a bit confused by the changed message, but weren't certain about whether the picture itself had changed, because it was still subtle. We see the picture again in the church in comic 503 after finding the veil. There's no mention of the message, but it's very clear that it's not just an art style evolution. Vanessa is once again projecting her mood that she and James weren't happy with his wedding. The comments went wild. With over 33 comments, many of which were multi-paragraph or even multi-page analyses. Next, in 672, in the bar just before Marissa enters, Vanessa is notably enamored with James, and Maria's expression changes to visible annoyance at her bridesmaid. In 801, after Vanessa enters the other world, the changes lose all sense of subtlety. This one is, ironically, quite close to the truth of what happened that day, as Vanessa is visibly drunk, and Mary and James are visibly disturbed. Vanessa has stopped lying about her behavior, but she hasn't twisted into the delusions that she later held. Then, in 921, in the Tunnel of Love, while riding beside the mannequin of the embodiment of James's anger and lust, we see Vanessa's lowest point of sanity. Here, Vanessa believes James actually returned her affections, and Mary is barely in the picture at all. Mary also greatly resembles the bride mannequin that Vanessa brutally destroys in the next scene. This also predicts the neutral ending, which, come on, willingly becoming a mind control puppet? How is that neutral, Mab? But I digress. Then, finally, in 1101 we see the real story. The photo has always looked like this. Best wham line ever. This is why Boy and the bartender were shocked, and Carmichael immediately offered to help after seeing the picture. They understood Vanessa had to be desperate or delusional to even keep this picture around, much less show it to people. From a Watsonian perspective, I cannot even fathom how Vanessa got the photo in the first place, as it would never have been printed on a professional camera roll. Just like with James, Vanessa had to hit rock bottom in her delusions and madness before she was able to heal. After all, that is the purpose of Silent Hill. It's almost a reflection of the parable of the potter in Jeremiah 18, breaking people's will in order to make them whole again. This focal point gives us a clear barometer of Vanessa's mental state while taking perfect advantage of the comics medium. Bravo, my friend. Glad to have been on this journey with you. Thanks for listening, y'all.